Before dawn broke, Amara's hands were already at work. The kitchen was her cage, a hot and airless place where the smell of butter masked the stench of sweat and sorrow. Every clang of copper pots echoed her heartbeat, steady and silent, as she moved through the motions of her servitude. She had learned long ago that silence was safer than speech. The masters loved her food, not her voice. The household she served was vast and cruelly proud, built on the bones of others. The master, a merchant turned lord, had made his fortune shipping sugar and souls, sweetness bought with suffering. His wife, draped in silk and sanctimony, believed herself merciful for allowing the servants to live. Amara had once looked into her eyes and seen only mirrors reflecting herself as nothing. Her skill in cooking was her shield. Every dish she made brought praise, and every praise was a shackle. The guests called her the angel of flavor, never knowing how bitter that tasted to her. They never asked where she had learned to balance sweetness and spice so perfectly. They didn't care that those recipes were whispers from her mother, long turned to dust in the red soil of a burned village. When she stirred a pot, she remembered the rhythm of drums. When she crushed herbs, she felt her mother's hand guiding her. Her food was her rebellion, small, secret, and alive in a world that wanted her spirit dead. That morning, word spread through the estate. There would be a grand wedding. The master's son would marry into nobility. The feast would be magnificent. Amara was chosen to lead the kitchen, to cook the banquet that would unite two empires in gold and deceit. She bowed her head in obedience, but beneath her quiet nod, something ancient stirred. It was not hope. It was memory and the first taste of vengeance. Night had always frightened her, not because of the dark, but because of what the dark remembered. Every time the oil lamps flickered in the manor kitchen, the flames pulled her back to that other fire, the one that devoured her home. She had been young then, with flour on her hands and laughter in her mouth. Her village was small but alive, surrounded by fields of cassava and palm, the air always smelling of spice and smoke from open hearths. Her mother used to hum as she cooked, saying that food carried memory, that every meal told a story about who you were and what you'd lost. Amara used to believe that nothing could burn that story away. Then came the soldiers. They rode in with flags of false mercy, speaking of trade and faith. When the first gunshots split the morning, the only thing she could taste was metal and fear. She remembered hiding beneath the kitchen table as her world turned to screams. Flames climbed walls painted with years of laughter. Her mother had tried to shield the village's sacred cookbook, a bundle of recipes inked with herbs and prayers. The soldiers tore it apart and laughed as the pages burned. When the smoke cleared, Amara was among the few left breathing. Bound in chains, she was marched toward the coast, toward ships that smelled of rust and salt and human sorrow. Every wave that rocked her prison whispered the same question. Why her? The answer came later, in the form of an order barked in a new language. Cook. Her gift, once a symbol of home, became her sentence. She learned to turn tears into salt, rage into flavor. Now, years later, as she stirred the wedding soup for her master's son, she caught a reflection of herself in the bubbling surface. Eyes older, heart harder, hands steady. The same fire that once destroyed her village now simmered beneath her calm. She had learned to feed her captors well, but soon she would feed them truth. The news of the wedding swept through the manor like perfume, thick, cloying, and impossible to escape. The master's son was to wed the daughter of a nobleman, uniting two dynasties built on the same sins: conquest, sugar, and servitude. There would be music, candles, imported wine, and laughter loud enough to drown the ghosts that lingered in the walls. For weeks, Amara worked without rest. The kitchen became a furnace of motion, pots hissing, knives flashing, servants scurrying under her calm command. To the masters, she was invisible, a shadow moving between fire and flavor. To the servants, she was a quiet miracle, the woman who never broke, who could create beauty from cruelty. But inside her, a recipe was forming, one no one would ever taste twice. Late one night, when the kitchen slept and only the embers glowed, she unlocked the small wooden box she had hidden beneath the floorboards. Inside was the remnant of her mother's wisdom, crushed leaves from a rare plant that grew only in the ashes of her homeland. The villagers had called it sleep's flower, a gentle name for something that promised death with kindness. It did not burn the throat nor twist the gut. It simply stopped the heart, soft as a sigh. She ground the dried petals slowly, their faint scent rising like a prayer. Her hands did not tremble. Every motion was measured, deliberate. For years she had been forced to sweeten the taste of cruelty. Now she would let sweetness itself deliver justice. In the days that followed, she began to weave her vengeance through the wedding menu. The honey glaze on the roasted pheasant, the candied fruits for the bride's dessert, the golden syrup poured over the wedding cake, shining like sunlight on blood. Each dish was crafted with love, an echo of the meals she once made for her family, before the fire, before the chains. But this time, love had a darker flavor. When the final day approached, the manor buzzed with excitement. Amara stood in the kitchen doorway. The day dawned too bright, as if the sun itself wished to witness the spectacle. The manor bloomed with color and sound. Fiddles tuning, servants rushing, guests arriving in silks that shimmered like oil. The air smelled of roses, smoke, and roasted meat. To everyone, it was a day of celebration. To Amara, it was Judgment Day. In the grand hall, the tables stretched endlessly, adorned with gold plates and crystal goblets. Flowers trailed down its length like veins, pulsing with life. Amara stood near the doorway, her apron spotless, her hands folded neatly. None of the guests noticed her. To them, she was part of the furniture, silent, useful, invisible. The first course was served. Golden soup scented with saffron and honey drifted through the air, gentle as a lullaby. The guests praised its warmth, its sweetness. Amara watched, eyes calm, as they drank deeply. Her heart did not race. The poison was subtle, slow, elegant, patient. It was not meant to kill quickly, but beautifully. Laughter rose, bouncing off the high ceilings. The bride glowed in lace and pearls. The groom's smug smile reflected candlelight. They toasted to love, to lineage, to legacy. And with every toast, they sipped their doom. The second course arrived, pheasant glazed in spiced honey, its golden skin glistening beneath the chandeliers. Perfection, the nobleman declared. Amara bowed her head slightly. Her mother's voice echoed faintly in her memory. Even sweetness can hide sorrow. By the time dessert was served, a magnificent cake layered with candied petals and sugared cream. The first signs began. A tremor in a hand, a glass slipping, a quiet cough that turned wet. Then another, then more. At first, the guests laughed, thinking it was wine or nerves. But the laughter faltered as faces paled and bodies swayed. Forks clattered. The music stumbled into silence. Amara stood still amid the chaos. The bride reached for her, eyes wide with confusion, but words failed her before breath did. One by one, when the last body fell, the hall grew impossibly still. The chandeliers still burned, their flames steady, as if unaware of the ruin beneath them. The scent of sweetness lingered, honey, wine, and decay. Amara stood in the doorway, framed by light and shadow, her face calm as dawn after a storm. For a moment, she simply listened. No commands, no footsteps, no laughter, only the quiet crackle of candles and the faint clink of a fallen goblet rolling to rest. She moved slowly through the room, her bare feet brushing over silks and spilled syrup. The groom's jeweled cup lay overturned beside his hand, his lips frozen mid-toast. The bride's veil, once white, now stained with sugar and wine, trailed across the floor like a ghostly ribbon. Around them, the great and powerful lay as they had lived, greedy, unseeing, beautiful in their destruction. Amara did not pray. She had done her praying long ago, and none had answered. This was not a prayer. It was balance. In the kitchen, the fire had burned low. She removed her apron, folded it neatly, and placed it beside the pot where it had all begun. The wooden spoon, her mother's, rested on the counter. She took it gently, as if lifting a relic. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to breathe without fear. Outside, the air was cool and damp. The stars hung low over the estate, glimmering like watchful eyes. Behind her, the manor stood silent, a monument to its own gluttony. She did not look back. The night swallowed her figure as she walked barefoot through the fields, the same fields where she once wept as a captive. Somewhere a night bird cried. Somewhere, the wind carried the faintest trace of sugar. Amara smiled, a small, tired smile. The empire that had devoured her people had, at last, tasted its sea. Years passed, and the manor where laughter once echoed became a hushed ruin. Vines climbed its stone walls, roots cracked the marble floors, and the grand dining hall, where golden plates once gleamed, now lay blanketed in dust. No one dared to buy the estate. Some said it was cursed. Others whispered that on quiet nights, the smell of sugar and spice drifted through the corridors, faint but unmistakable. The story spread across the countryside, of a wedding where the wine turned to death, and a cook who vanished into the night. Some said she was caught and hanged by soldiers. Others swore she was never found, that she melted into the forest and became something older than grief. Travelers passing by told of strange things. A faint humming near abandoned kitchens, a woman's voice singing in a language no one knew, and the soft clatter of pots where no one lived. A few even claimed that those who tasted wild honey near the ruins dreamed of her, a calm face by a fire, stirring something unseen, smiling faintly as if remembering a secret. In time, her name was forgotten, but her legend remained. To the masters, she was a warning. To the servants, she was a promise. Mothers whispered her tale to their daughters, not as horror, but as history, proof that even the voiceless could speak through silence. And on nights when the moon was full and the air heavy with sweetness, the wind carried her final words, soft, certain, eternal. They feasted on our lives. I only return the favor. The house still stands, hollow but breathing, waiting for its next meal of memory and guilt. And if you ever pass by and smell honey on the wind, don't linger. It means she's still cooking,